We talked previously about this incredibly disturbing statement that Donald Trump put out, saying that Mitch McConnell has a death wish, and then saying something racist about Mitch McConnell's wife. And I want to look at Liz Cheney calling out other Republicans for just, and this is the norm now, not at all condemning Trump for saying this type of stuff. Trump still is the leader of the party, not in a technical sense, not in Congress or something, or in the executive branch, but in the sentiment of the Republican base, he still is the foremost leader, and no one within the party feels comfortable speaking out against him ever, even though this is something that so obviously is not appropriate within the political world. And we saw Rick Scott getting super uncomfortable when he was asked if he was going to condemn it. So here's a reminder of that message. He talks about McConnell supporting the Democratic agenda, and then he says, in any event, either reason is unacceptable. He has a death wish, must immediately seek help and advice, he spelled that wrong, from his China-loving wife, Coco Chow. So again, going after Mitch McConnell's Taiwanese wife for being China-loving and saying Coco Chow, which I don't even know what the heck that has to do with her. But quite crazy. And I got some backlash calling this a violent threat, a death wish, saying his death wish. Guys, Donald Trump has a following of people who just him saying the election was stolen and come to Washington got hundreds of them, thousands to actually go, but then hundreds to do probably the violence on January 6th, to break in to the Capitol, all those things. And he was saying, come to the Capitol, it's going to be crazy. He didn't say anything about death to any of the people. In this situation, he says Mitch McConnell has a death wish. That's not a violent threat whenever his followers are ravenous when it comes to these things, when it comes to people that Trump hates. I don't know. And then, of course, the racist thing as well. So then here is Liz Cheney speaking out against that statement and then calling out other GOP members for not doing the same.
You know, when you see former President Trump just in the last 24 hours suggesting in a pretty thinly veiled way, using words that could well cause violence against the Republican leader of the Senate, saying he has a death wish, and then launching a absolutely despicable racist attack against Secretary Chow, Leader McConnell's wife. And then you watch the fact that nobody in my party will say that's unacceptable. And everybody ought to be asked whether or not that's acceptable. And everybody ought to be able to say, no, that is not acceptable. They ought to be required to say that. When you see...
sorry about that. That is no longer the norm, where we can't just expect our leaders not to say that other leaders have a death wish, say something racist about their wife, and we can't expect people within their party to say, hey, that was wrong. We saw Rick Scott mumble and bumble and get all uncomfortable trying to figure out a way not to properly speak out against Trump, but also make it clear that he wasn't necessarily supporting the direct things that Trump said. So y'all know this is the country we now live in, but it's just another reminder. And I think part of the response that I got from people saying that my calling of that as some sort of a death threat, even though obviously he's not directly saying, I want you to die, he's getting way closer to that than any politician in America has in a very long time. That's not true. Some of the Congress people on the right say similar things, but a former president. And I think some of the backlash I got has to do with people having a hard time accepting that that's actually something that would be a part of the reality we now live in, where a former president says something like, hey, the leader in the Senate of my party has a death wish. Death wish. Hear it, people. I'm so sick of people saying that's not a big deal, whatever. No, that is a huge deal. We've seen his words that are less severe than that get people killed on January 6th, as well as threaten the lives of numerous politicians and storm the Capitol and all that type of stuff. So when he's escalating the words he uses and he knows the effect of his rhetoric, yes, we can try to hold him accountable socially, societally for that. And it's not us being crazy to call that a horrible thing at all. So there it is, Liz Cheney calling out Trump and other Republicans in regard to the situation.